Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. My name is Glenn Keller, and in this video we are going to tackle the second 4 of these administrative tiles that are sitting on my Active Admin workspace. In the previous video we talked about the people, the workflows, the elements that are right over here on this side of the page. So people, access manager, workflows, and table configurator. Now we're going to be taking a look at query builder, viewer administration, what we can kind of siphon from indexing and searching, assignment lists, and then we'll be also doing an additional video on how to get one of these out into the environment so that we can use them. Then we'll use the preferences tile that isn't actually installed as our use case for that. So to begin with, just kind of continuing from the last video, the Query Builder application is a newer build. So this is in 24.12 and it finally came in. We've been waiting on it. What this does is when you open it up and you interact with it, it has different queries that are available in here. Now these queries are different than the global search that we're used to working with in Active Workspace. The queries that are in here, if you switch to the author location, these queries do not impact this global search tool up at the top here at all. They have nothing to do with it. So what these queries do is they impact this advanced search down here. So these are the same queries that in our Teamcenter Rich Client application, if we were to come in and we were to hit this advanced button here and open up this search, there were a list of queries in this display, and if you hit more, there's a bunch of them. So these queries are the exact same queries as the ones in Active Workspace here, and you can only access them through the advanced search. So in here, if I hit the advanced search, it will open up and I'll be able to pick from a set of preferred queries up at the top, as well as all of the queries down below. There is one difference that I have noticed, and that's if you're a DBA, which I am currently, I do not see my administrative queries. So there are a set of administrative queries defined in the Rich Client. If I hit more, you'll see them as ___inx ___ objects. These are administrative queries meant to only be seen by DBAs. In an Active Workspace, I do not see those queries. So that is the only gap that I can find. But once you work with these queries a little bit, you can search on them. If I do something like the general search, it'll come up with a list of predefined fields. Unlike the global search, which then has you filter afterward, in this case, you have to actually spell out each thing. So if I do part, I can do part revision, and then I can hit search, and I can use date fields and whatnot. So in this case there weren't any, so I can do search here, and you can see if I do a star in there, then I can get the 5 search results. Now this search does work on object types, so you can get master objects or items, do dataset searches. It's not as tuned as the global search, which will only give you item revisions back, and then you have to find the items. The one downfall is the advanced search is a little bit slower in nature because it searches the whole database rather than the new fancy Solar environment that Siemens put together. So if I go back over to the administrative application, go into Active Admin, I have my Query Builder application here. And then in the Query Builder application, if I wanted to modify a query that existed already, I need to know where the query is used. So don't just modify anything unless you're in a development environment. Some queries are used as parts of reports. So when a report fires, it runs a query, and the query is defined to support the report. If you delete the query or change the query and it has a tie to a report, then you could end up getting yourself in a little trouble. So just note that reports are still managed over here, and you would have to go into Open Perspective, Report Builder, right here. And then in Report Builder, you could see out of all your Teamcenter reports which ones are utilizing a query. So notice this one says that it has a class on it instead of a query. It's a class. So anything that has this little pencil icon down here is not going to be a summary one, but anyone that has a little paper definition, you can see has a query source. So this query right here is used as a part of that report. So if you wanted to know a full list, this is the best way to see which queries are associated to what. But you could also run what's called an administrative report. It's a admin data report, and then that will give you a nice little interface in HTML that you can see what's referenced to what. If you're going to build queries, you can come in here and you can associate which property you want to search on, information about how it displays to the user, as well as default values. You can use and or operators to segregate these out. You can edit, and when you edit it, you can change it from what type of search it is, and this basically equals what you want to get back from the search, a user versus an item revision versus what is the goal. You can also define more information about the properties. So if I wanted to create a query, I could do it from right up here in the top. And then over on the right hand side, I could call this my training test query. I want to search on all item revisions in the system and then hit create. I've created my new query at this point. It's going to pop up. I'm going to say test query definition for class. And then I could say, since this is an item revision, I could say only give me the results pertaining to a specific revision rule. Basically defining to only show me the latest revision of an object or the earliest. It just depends. If I don't set this, it is going to show me basically what is configured in my current revision rule in the system, which is up here. So in here I can add criteria, and for an item revision, maybe I want to find any item revision that has an associated specification relationship. So I could say anything that has a name of this, but those queries already exist. So I could come in here and say IMAN specification, but notice nothing shows up. So this one would only take the value of what you display here. So if I wanted to see internal names from the BMIDE, I could see them here. If I wanted to see display names, I could see them here. And then I could say all properties instead of only the properties that exist on that object. And that is something you'll learn about how properties are inherited in the BMIDE. At this point, I could come in and I could say specification, and notice nothing showed up. So I would need to scroll down, and there used to be a nice little helper tool in the rich client that hasn't been ported over yet to help you understand what you can select from. So my goal is to find the relation element, which is usually a part of this, so that you can indicate that you want to find all item revisions with a specific relationship defined. If I come down, you can see used options, variants. I cannot find that in here. Now I can go down to the rich client and show you that in the query builder in the rich client, if I come down to this area, it's right here, and I do the exact same definition. So I'm going to do a new query. It's going to be item revision. I'm going to use F3 to cycle through the results. Once it does the search, it is working at the moment down in the corner here. So once it finds those results, it is a little slower in that BMID. It has to load that whole cache up. You can see it didn't find anything. In this case, I need to do item revision and then I get something. So in that search, I need to put in the actual real name of the definition, and then I can see item revision is here. So I've got the same thing now, so I'll call this test. And then it's a local query on Teamcenter, and I've got the whole thing defined. If I come down a little bit further, go into display settings, do all, real names, come down here, you'll notice there's tags. So this is a link to the item. If you come down further, there will be a specification relationship. So here's the release status list, sequences, and then here are the relationships. IMAN specification should be one of these. There's simulation. Just looking for it. I think I picked a little cumbersome of a first example here. In this case, IMAN specification may not be. I see requirement and snapshot. Simulation, manifestation. Notice it's not in alphabetical order. There it is. IMAN specification, and then from there I can say show me anything with a data set. So I do need a star on this one, and then I can pick data set, and then at that point I basically select something and I get rid of that final attribute, so it's only checking the relationship, and then I get rid of this as well to make it blank, and then I could say, data set with IMAN specification, there is no default value, and I could create it. So in this case, it needs an entry. I'm going to say is not null, so it definitely contains it, and then hit create. So I can create this query over here just fine, and then when I come in here and I try and define the same thing, the search type is item revision, it's got a name and a description, I hit add, and then there are no relationships that I can see right off the get-go. Now if I come down to WSO thread, notice this one has like POM values, based on values. I would have to go through each iteration. Now, what you're not looking at is across the top here. Notice that you can now filter by relations. So at first it's really looking like the query builder doesn't have as much, but it really has more, because you don't have to scroll all the way through that list anymore to go find it like I was having issues with. You can now filter to relationships and do IMAN specification. In this case, it's display names, so specification. And then I could select it, and I could say to a data set. So there's data set, pick a specific one and select it. And then at this point, I've got everything selected that I want. I need to pick like a format or a property on it. So I'll just pick format and hit add. So in this case, if I move this column over a little bit, I'll double click in here and notice it has a localization key, but I can't modify the format used. So in here, I could come in and say dataset only, say data set. I only want the data set. Notice it doesn't let me add it. So if I could come in here and choose edit in this table and actually edit the property internal name setting here, then it would give me the full definition of what I would need. But at this point, I'm not able to find a way to do that same definition. Either way, this is a basic intro to queries, and again, there's an import-export function up across the top to take individual queries across. There are additional tools called administration data tools that allow you to do this a little bit more effectively, but these internal tools are great for one-offs. So at this point, I'm just going to hit cancel on this one. It is very close, and we'll go back to our home page. The viewer administrator is next. So in this, if you select it, it is more of an infrastructure architect's tool, but you can see right away that I have access to see my server pool assigner as well as my server manager. And the server pool assigner is essentially the thing that gets the request from me when I go view something in 3D or 2D that requires the viewer. This will receive the request from me and then pass it to the server manager, which is the visualization server manager, assign it a process, and then you will see information about the processes that are assigned here. It's a really good validation tool to understand what's what and who's getting assignments. You can also click the info button up across the top, and there is information about that pool, size and statistics on memory usage, how many servers it has, bandwidth availability, etc. So it's a really cool tool. I'm going to go ahead and launch a 3D Viz component. So I'm just going to come back in here and go to author. And then in the author location, I'm just going to do a search for something I know I have in here that has 3D data underneath of it. And if I come into these objects here, I have the 3D table here. So depending on what it can load up and everything, it should display my 3D data, and you can see that pops up right here. So I know it's working now, and if I go back to my Active Architect location or workspace, then I can take a look at that viewer administration panel again, and you'll notice that it has a Viz process assigned to a client, and this is my client. So if I select information about each one of these, it'll tell me some information, but notice the IP address is restricted, so you can't get internal information, but you can see other bits. If I go to Viz process, you can see the Viz processes are here. It gives me a little bit about what it is using, and then you have the server manager and pool assigner. And this will web out if you have multiple users in the system. It is a very valuable tool. If we make our way over, the indexing and search administration tile is kind of a newer tile in the system, and this has come in with the latest version. If you look in here, the global search is essentially the search definition you see when you come over to the author location. If I open this up, you've got the global search up here. And if you aren't a big infrastructure person, just note that this actually searches on a different database, and data is flagged and then duplicated into that database by the infrastructure architects and by BMIDE administrators to say what is a valid searchable thing. So if you want one type of object to be searchable all the time and you don't want these other types to be searchable, the indexer tool helps to define that along with some attributes inside of this tool. So just note this can filter or is indexed attribute here. If this is set to false in the BMIDE, then it isn't going to be searchable in this tool. If this is set to true in the BMIDE, then that tool will search on it. Overall, the goal is to reduce the searchable objects to speed up the search results. However, once that configuration is deployed and set up, this search goes through and it checks and picks up on objects every so many seconds, and it depends on your environment on how frequent that is. So if I come into the administrative application, indexer and search administration, you'll notice it has one global search here. It tells me a lot about the health of this system. So in here I have the solar status. This is that database. If I'm having search problems, I could check right here instead of having my infrastructure team go in and check it. It's standalone mode, which just means I'm not using dispatcher in the background. Solar version, whether or not I can get files back and forth, which is essential in downloading the Viz data. whether or not I have specific triggers installed in the database to pick up on new data in our syncs. And then you can see details about those. You can also run diagnostics, and I can say, hey, let's go ahead and do a general search for anything that has a name starting with cut or containing cut. If I do this, I'm going to clear out some of the other attributes in here. I don't want any pre-settings because that'll skew my search. And then I can hit get indexing status, and it'll find anything that has an index with that name or matches that. It'll say it passed 4. I got not indexed or 4. All 8 are here. And the ones that aren't indexed are these, and those are the items, the masters. And those are not indexed in my system, so that makes sense. If I want to just see the past ones, I could see those, and I could compare this to my search results in the advanced search. If anything seems off here, you're always going to want to go to the advanced search to verify it because that's the true search. If I come back out, the other thing is the assignment lists. So when you're submitting a workflow process and you're defining who to pick, some of these workflow processes have a lot of tasks. And when you submit it, you have the option to go through and pick somebody for every individual task in these assignments. And then when the user goes in, they have to go manually pick all these different places. But in newer versions, we've been relying more on dynamic participants and resource pools so that you don't have to do that. Now, in this environment, you can assign all tasks to resource pools or inboxes that people then claim the tasks from. And we can set up a list of assignments so that it can reduce the amount of clicks your users have to go through to assign people. Now, obviously, you can't do this if you're not 100% aware of where it's going to go at that point, and the system will double back to you to ask at that point. But if I don't want them to have to fill all of this information out every single time they submit, I can pick an assignment list and have it apply to them. So in here, let's go ahead and just build an example. I'm going to say assignment lists. I can see create assignment list is right in the middle. And then I'm going to call this my requirement, or actually my CR list. So change request list. I could share it out with other individuals. And then if I create it, then I can pick what I want it to be based on. So in this case, notice it's based on that ABC workflow, because that's the template right here. And if I click it, it'll open up that template for me to take a look at. So in here, I've got the assignment list. I can go find it again. I've actually got to go back here. So I can see this assignment list is based on that. If I wanted to edit this, I can come into edit, start edit, and then notice that template is not modifiable in this case. So this assignment list, I need to come down, select a object as a part of the workflow, and then I could say the initiate workflow is never going to be set by somebody, which means it's going to come right back to me every time to allow me to populate the workflow. So I'm going to leave that one alone. Then I'm going to come to the review task, and I want the engineering group to actually review this. So engineering designers specifically. I could also just do anybody in the engineering group, and I could assign it as a reviewer. And then I could say modify. Now the engineering review, I could say anybody in the engineering group could pick that, but they have to choose somebody from the designer role to actually sign off on it. So I'm going to click assign, hit modify. And then if rework comes back in, this is going to get assigned back to me as the initiator. So I'm going to leave that blank. Now, if I don't specify a list like this, every time a user submits to it, they're going to have to populate these. So if I only have to do it once per process, that's going to help them out. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose edit, save edit. Now, if I come back out, And I'm not the InfoDBA user. I'm going to go to Author. And then I'm going to switch my group and role. So switch to engineering. And what that affects in the system is if I come into Explorer and I submit something to that workflow, I should have the option to pick that assignment list at that point. So just waiting for the page to pop up here. And then you can see I've got my home. I'm going to expand this out, go to my new stuff. I've got this cutting head assembly here. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this up. So I'm going to say manage and then choose submit to workflow. Then in here, I can see there's assignments for a workflow. I'm going to actually choose all in my case because I don't have any restrictions on what workflows. I'm going to choose that workflow, and then I'm going to go to assignments. And you'll see that in this workflow, there's those 4 assignments, and I could individually go pick all of them again. But if I have an assignment list, like up here, I could just pick that, and then it will use that list and auto-populate them. So that speeds up my process as I want to submit that workflow to those selections. So all of those tools that we just talked about inside of the Active Admin location, if I come back in, all of those tools are configurable. Let me switch this back to DBA. Got to be DBA to have access to Active Admin, just as a recursor there. But all these tools allow you to modify or do something inside of Active Workspace, and they're all installed as what are called features, some of which are only client-side and some are server-side. In the next video, we're going to add another feature called Preference Manager into the list, and we're going to take a look at some of these elements and whether or not we had to select something to get them to be in the system. We thank you for joining us on this video, and we hope you'll learn a little bit about the other 4 tiles in the Active Admin page.